Welcome to Walking with the Chosen. I'm your host, Shay Keith. On today's episode, I'm going to interview Karen, and she's going to tell us all about her story, what life was like before she met Jesus, and what life was like after she met Jesus with the Chosen. Let's get started. Well, welcome back. First, I need to let you know that I was planning on doing season 2, episode 2. But as luck would have it, I have been so busy painting this condo. I'm not sure if I have told my audience this, but I am going to host an exchange student this year, and she's going to be here in 2 months. And my condo, well, it was from the 1980s, so it needed a lot of work, and I pulled off the wallpaper and I've started painting, but it's not completely done yet. I have 2 months to get everything wrapped up, and my brother's going to be here to help me install new flooring in about 3 weeks, so I really have to hustle right now. So my room that I'm currently in is going to be her bedroom. So soon you're going to see a new background behind me. I haven't quite figured out what that's going to look like because this is going to be moving into my bedroom. So there will be a new background behind me, and I will still be showing this as much as I can. You'll see several episodes where I'm still interviewing people in this room because that's just where I've been at for the most of the time. But I do have several interviews already recorded, and I do plan on working on the next several episodes of seasons 2, 3, and 4. And right now, as you all probably know, we're in the middle of season 4. We're getting ready to see episode 3 on Sunday night. And we all, if you've seen it in the movie theater, you know what to expect and what's coming. So this is going to be a tough season for us to get through. And after being an extra on season 5, oh man, this show is just going to keep getting harder and harder. I'm already planning for season 6 and what that's going to be like if I'm lucky enough to be an extra on that season, because I know it's going to be really hard to be there and witness these scenes unfold in front of us. I know what it was like just from being there for season 5. The gal I'm getting ready to interview, her name is Karen, and she has a really good story. I talked to her before we both went on set for season 5. She was a week 3 extra, I was a week 2 extra, so the things that we saw were a little different. And we don't have any spoiler alerts for season 4. We mentioned that we saw season 4 in the theaters, but we don't actually talk about any of the episodes. Even though you'll hear me mention here in this episode, I make a comment about, well, now that I've already talked about season 4 on the show, which I haven't, I actually did record an episode for the first 3 episodes of season 4 and didn't release it because I just felt like I was all over the place. I'm really trying to work on my craft. I want to become less all over the place and a little bit more defined on my conversation. I'm doing that both with my editing process and even the recording process. So it's a learning thing. I'm learning brand new software that I like a lot better, and I think it's going to make my edit process a little faster, which is good because I need help with that so that I can get these turned around every single week. And I'm giving you a heads up here. I will be on vacation next week, so I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to get next week's episode done, but I'm going to try my best. Okay, I think that's enough for me to talk right now. Let's get into this episode. I'm going to introduce you now to Karen. I have Karen here, and she's going to share her testimony with us. Karen, welcome to Walking with the Chosen.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And glad to be here to share a little bit of my story.
Oh, I'm excited to have you here because a lot of people are a little shy about sharing their testimony, and I get it because it was hard for me to do it as well. So I totally understand. So thank you very much for being brave and courageous and coming on and sharing this with everybody. So first off, just tell us about who you are. What's your home life like? Where you come from? Where do you call home?
Okay. I live in Cape Cod, Yoshi Barrigas land, but and I have 2 sons, grown sons, that my husband and I have been very blessed with. We have a great family, and so thankful for all of that. We've all been through an awful lot, and I'm no longer working. Not really retired, but not by choice. So
Okay.
I'll leave it at that. But so I love doing things, like decorating. And I used to be a cake decorator. I used to work in the medical field, and I worked in the operating room, did that for quite a few years. And then I had an accident. So
Mhm.
um, that's where I kind of left off.
Well, that's really interesting to hear. Does that kind of lead into your BC Karen story? Do you want to share more about that?
Yes. Um, so it's a little bit of a complicated story. So I'll start a little bit with me at first, and then I'll lead into a couple other things. So I don't want to say a person that is dying from cancer. I always like to say that I am living with cancer. And so at this time, I actually found out that my um, that it had spread. And at the same time, um, I also had an accident at work. So I had a slip and fall accident. I ended up with a traumatic brain injury, lost some hearing, little things like that. So those were the two things that I myself was going through and trying to deal with. And this was all during COVID. So it was very depressing. And I just, I didn't know where to turn. So in my life, just as though everyone else goes through their struggles through life, there had been things that had happened that I just, I was always asking God why. And I was raised Catholic. My parents were very um, strict Catholics, but when things started to get really rough, I kind of like backed off, like so many of us do, um, because I kept saying, God, like they say in The Chosen, God, do you hear me? And why? I kept asking why all the time. So then all of a sudden, my youngest son had gotten married. They had only been married a year and a half. And one day while I was still working, I received a phone call at work, from his mother-in-law saying that they had gone to a wedding in the Dominican Republic, and it was a family wedding, and that something had happened, and she wanted us to meet her at their house. They were coming back that night. So I was like, okay, well, is everybody okay? You never call a mother and tell them, just meet us there. So I was like, is Matthew, okay? Is, something, I just didn't know what to think. And she's like, no, I don't want to talk about it on the phone. So, but just meet us at our house tonight. I'm like, okay. Well, first thing I did was call my son. I'm like, are you okay? So he was in shock, and he said, I'm all right, Ma. He said, we'll talk about it when I get home. But he says, I fell something, I don't know how it happened. Well, long story short, he was left in an emergency room in the Dominican Republic, being stitched up. Someone who we later found out may have been his ex-wife now, that drugged him. And so that was a long process. We watched him go through all the struggles of trying to come to terms with it, because he had forgotten some of the things that had happened. And I told you it was probably going to be like a Dateline story. So, but he was left in the emergency room with no identification, no phone, no medical card, and someone from the hotel was the one that brought him back, and then they flew back that night. So this was part of the struggle for him, trying to figure out what was going on. At the same time, all this other stuff was going on with me. And then my older son had a freak accident. He was riding his daughter's bike, which my older son used to race BMX bikes all his teenage years. And he ended up, he was on her bike and put his foot down in an awkward way and shattered his leg. So they told him that he wasn't going to walk again, that, um, you know, his whole life was going to change. And then all of a sudden he was back to work. He was walking in 6 months through the grace of God, through prayer. and all these other things.
Your youngest son goes to a family wedding. He's already married, right? And he goes to a
Correct.
family wedding and he's down in the Dominican Republic. And then he has somebody somehow drugged him and they thought he was almost dead. Is that why they left him in the emergency room?
Well, she couldn't handle it. His ex-wife couldn't handle it. So when we started to put the pieces together, we realized that it, there was no other way that it wasn't her that did it. He did still have his Yeti cup that had medication like crystallized at the bottom. The medication that she had taken does that when it's mixed with alcohol. Um, so, and she never talked to him again after that. After we went to the parents' house, she never talked to him again. And it was a long weekend trying to figure out everything. And I even had, when he came to our house that first night, I went to go and wash his clothes for him, and all of a sudden I look in his suitcase and there were chunks of glass. So what we realized later on that happened was they brought him to the room, and it was her father that said it, that he had passed out in the pool. They brought him to the room, sat him up in bed, and that they left him. Well, if anybody knows, being in the medical field, if you've been drugged, you cannot sit up. You are just completely limp. So somehow the bathroom glass wall, someone threw him in that. And that's what happened. He ended up with 60 stitches. He almost lost his thumb. It was a disaster. I could not believe that he's such a good-hearted person and worked so hard to build a house for them. And, he's an electrician, so he did all the electrical work in the house. But he also had really good insurance and the house. So if something happened to him, she would have gotten everything. And, I'm not the kind of person that wants to think that someone would be so evil to do something like that. But after putting all the pieces together, there was no other choice. It had to have been her.
Did the families think like, oh, we know our daughter was responsible, or did they all just kind of claim innocence and walk away from it?
They all claimed innocence. And, it was just, I don't understand it. He was good to all of them.
So at that time, you said you were raised Catholic, but at
Mm-hmm.
this point in time, you've already been diagnosed with cancer. You've had your fall at work, right?
Right.
And were you a believer in Jesus at that time?
At that time, I kept asking why. I prayed. I still prayed, but I was so I was just so depressed because I couldn't understand why God had let all these things happen. And now I know through the chosen and through the grace of God, I know He would not let that happen. You know what I mean? That it's other things, whether it's the evil one or whatever, it was because of God that we made it through that. But when, I had stopped going to church and I wanted to end my life. I could not take it anymore. I was like, I didn't know which way to turn. I didn't know where to turn. And then I started searching because I started praying. I said, well, prayer is the only thing that's going to get me out of this. I don't want to do this. There has to be another way. God has to be the way. So I started searching online for, Christian movies, Christian shows, something to get me back to God. And I found The Chosen. And the first time that I watched it, I have to be truly honest, for the first episode, and I also lost my father at an early age. So when the first time I watched the first episode of season 1, I was like, I don't know, this isn't for me. When I saw Mary going through all her things, it just didn't hit me right. So I couldn't continue to watch it that day. But then I said, you know what, I've got to give this another shot because there's something that's drawing me back to watching The Chosen. And when I did, And at the very end of episode 1, when I saw Mary on the cliff and the dove came flying around her, and I was just, it broke me. It broke me. And then when they went back to the tavern and Jesus put his hand on her, and when she left the building, and then, when he called her by name, that did it. I just, that threw me, because I just was, when Mary melted into Jesus's arms, that that's what brought me out of all of this. And I had to see more. So I started watching. I watched the second episode, and I saw the change in Mary and how beautiful and calm she was. And I knew that this was something I needed to watch. And it did bring me back to church. I told my husband, I said, I need to go back to church. And so I did. At first, it took a lot for me to start to get back into it. But the more I watch The Chosen, in every episode, there's a little piece of my life in every episode, as there is, I'm sure, in so many others. And this is why this show, thank you, Dallas Jenkins, for following God's lead, because this is what is going to save so many people. Even, like when Matthew says to Philip, we don't want people to define us by our past. It's the things that we've been through in our life, and there has been some awful things that have happened. But God gives us that strength to make it through another day and make it through another day. And before you know it, our faith grows so much deeper that, I don't know, like I say, every episode has something in it. The children, episode 3 with the children, which I'll explain, but by this bringing me back, the episode, it was that one, and then the fishermen, to become fishers of men with Simon, and how he fell to his knees in the glory of God. And every single one of them. Fotina, same thing, at the well. It's like God doesn't choose perfect people, so, and we all make mistakes. None of us are perfect. And I think that's what makes this so important too,
Yeah,
So,
I know. It's like you're just telling me the stuff, and even thinking about those scenes makes me tear up even more, because I'm the same way. I mean, when I saw that first episode, I hadn't gone to church in years, and to sit
mhm,
there and watch that episode, I don't know, I couldn't even explain it. I'm like, why is this episode making me cry? I mean,
right,
it just didn't make sense
right,
logically.
right. But it's true. And then it's like, even with her father, like I say, my father died at a young age. I was young, and the things that he used to tell me, and he was, like I said, he was very devout Catholic. He would go to church every morning before he went to work. He died from cancer as well, and that part touched me too, because of his closeness to God. But it's amazing what can happen, when you give yourself to God, and how things can turn around. And like you always, at least I did, I always looked at, the awful things that were happening. And our youngest son at that same time, even he made it through all of that stuff that he went through, and then he got Lyme disease. And I remember, and then he fell on his dirt bike, and it's been one thing after another. But I remember going to the hospital to pick him up and praying out loud, and like crying out loud, like Nathaniel did under the tree. Do you hear me? You know what I mean? And it's like, so yeah. The writing, the actors, everything that is so involved with The Chosen. It's I feel in my heart that they have all been chosen by God to play the parts that they do. They do it so well and so relatable. That it's just an amazing show.
What about your boys? Were they believers before? Are they believers now? Did they watch the show? Have you going back to church, has that helped them any?
I still my Our oldest son has gone back to church at times. Our youngest son, I think he wants to, but I think he's feeling the same thing that I was feeling. Like, why did these things happen to him? And I keep telling him to pray. I keep telling him to watch The Chosen. Our oldest son is addicted to The Chosen. He would have loved to have gone to Utah as well, but
That's good that your family's enjoying. What about your husband? Has he watched too?
oh yeah, and he went with me to Chosen Con, and he loves it too. We don't very seldom watch any other kind of TV. It's usually The Chosen, so
I'm the same way. It's like
yeah,
once you, I can't, I mean, I wish I could explain to people how that show changes you. I mean, like for me, it changed how I thought. It changed what I watched. It changed what
right,
I read. It got me to go back to church again. It got me reading the Bible. I mean, it just
right,
totally
exactly.
changed me. You know?
Right. And I feel like I've always tried to be a good person, but I feel like it's made me such a better person. And because it led me back to God in the way that it did, it has made me able to do things that even with all of the stuff that I've had to deal with myself, it's led me to places I have never dreamed of that I would ever be doing. And that's, to me, it's like so God sent. And again, thank you, Dallas Jenkins, for following everything that he told you to do. And Amanda, I mean, everything, Mr. Superman, you know what I mean?
Yes.
you know,
I love
so
that.
I started to do different things at church, and I started to get more involved. And I became like a rosary, I don't know, leader. And then that wasn't enough. So then I ended up becoming a Eucharistic minister, which is something that I never thought I was ever worthy of doing anything like that. You know what I mean? I always felt unworthy of everything. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
Yes. I totally know what you mean.
yeah. So I did that, and I do that. And then I also started teaching catechism to the fifth graders. Um, and I don't know how I'm doing it, but I'm a hands-on person. I'm a visual kind of person, so I love doing this. It's like God has not well one door. They always say God closes one door and opens up another. So
Yeah.
I lost my job because of the head injury, and you know and I couldn't go back to work. All my friends, they're friends while you're working with them. Some did keep in touch, but the friends that I have made through The Chosen, through church, it's like I have this whole new family that I thank God for every single day, because especially the people at The Chosen, it's the most amazing people I have ever met. It's what the world should be. They're kind, and I'm not saying everybody agrees or gets along with everyone all the time, but the type of people that you meet there of all different faiths, and you come together as one family to worship one God, and we are, it's just the most amazing experience I've ever had in my life. So, and I do show The Chosen to my fifth graders, and they love it. They absolutely love it. I started with episode 3, and they were amazed. And the next week, they're like, "Are you going to show us another one this week?" So I said, "Well, eventually," but I did show them the one with Simon and the fish. Um, I show little clips, like whatever the gospel's about that week. I will, search through the Chosen episode and show them the little clips so that they have that visual. And Jonathan Rumi, who plays Jesus, is the most amazing person I've seen him. I haven't really met him. That would be a dream someday if that ever happens. But, I just, no one, I don't think, could ever play that part like he does. I think he is truly led by God as well. his eyes show everything, and everything that he puts into his character of Jesus is amazing.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing. Like, my parents are very strict Catholic, and of course, they're disappointed that I left Catholic Church and I went to non-denominational. But
Hmm.
like I said, I've been away from the Catholic Church for a long time. And then once I saw The Chosen, I just something I wanted that I wasn't getting from the Catholic Church in the past was being fed by the Bible, and I
Right.
needed that. And so that's kind of how I went from the Bible to the church. And but I was excited because at first my mom was like, I don't know if you should be watching these kind of shows, and so she didn't want to watch. But last year during Lent, they decided to start watching The Chosen, and they saw the first
Really.
two seasons.
Hmm.
My dad was falling asleep in the beginning, but now he even says, "Boy, that actor that plays Jesus, he sure is good." So I know that they're starting to see Jesus kind of like in the same light that a lot of us are, because Jonathan does such an amazing job. And it
Right.
has to be partly, well, God probably picked him to play the part, but also
Right.
just praying for this. I mean, he prays every time he comes out.
Right.
So in season four, have you seen season four?
I have, and I absolutely loved it. I went back to see 7 and 8 for the second time.
Sounds like you've had a lot happen in your life. Your son shattered his leg. We never quite finished that story. So he shattered his leg and he managed to get it going again after what, 6 months, you said?
After 6 months, he was walking and back to work within 6 months after they told him he wasn't going to be walking again. So, I mean, God is good. You know what I mean? I just, and prayer, I think, there was a line inside of The Chosen. It was with Thaddeus and Matthew, and it says, prayer becomes habit like writing, and you do it daily. So I, I think prayer is like a strong weapon, if you want to call it that. But it also gives us peace. So massive praying. I belong to so many prayer warrior groups that everybody was praying, and I do believe in the power of prayer. So I think with all of that, that helped him, go back to work and just to be able to walk. He's like a bionic man in that leg, but that's okay. You know what I mean? He deals with it, and, you know, so I'm very thankful for that.
Have you experienced things like, for me, when I went back to a non-denominational church? I mean, there were times where I would go in there, and of course they start off with worship music and we start singing, and I was emotional with that after watching The Chosen and having my life change. Have you felt that going back to the Catholic Church? Have you had those emotional ties maybe through Easter or those other moments where it's starting to feel a lot more real to you now because The Chosen brought it to life?
Yes. Especially when I hear the Gospels, and I know, because it's brought me back to the Bible as well. And but when I hear the Gospels, I picture the characters and the chosen up there, and the story is like about them in a sense. But the music, I do get really emotional with the music at church, especially because like when I do get to serve, I walking back to my to the pew, I stop not bawling, but I get very emotional and I start crying because I could never imagine myself being allowed to do something like that. And I might not agree with everything that happens in the Catholic Church, but I am glad for me that I did make that jump and go back. And after I'm going to tell this. I'm sharing my heart with you. But after almost 40 years, I went back to confession. And, it was like a big weight lifted off my shoulder, and I bawled like a baby and everything else. So, but I think that was a good release as well. So, and for me, it helped me.
I think that was probably like that surrendering. It's like, I'm letting go of all of this. I'm giving all of it to you. And there
Yes.
is something that's like a release with that. I remember, I did it just with me and Jesus in the room, and I just,
Mhm. Right.
I was crying. I'm like, I don't understand all this. I'm giving it to you.
I know. But
Oh, it's beautiful.
it's beautiful, to actually have that strong feeling like we should, well, like I should have had my whole life. And because of The Chosen, bringing me back to the Bible, bringing me back to church, I've never experienced it like that before. Even being in a Catholic family, this, I mean, I have so much gratitude for everything that the Chosen has brought. And, I pray for all of them all the time so that they stay strong and, continue to make this work for everybody. And I try to support whenever I can with the Come and See and, it was Angel Studios and, I have a whole wardrobe of the Chosen
Me too.
clothes and my blanket. So
Oh.
which I used as a tree skirt at Christmas.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, it was really cute. So I'm a little obsessed, but in a good way.
So all this happened, you said right around, and we talked before we got on the recording here, that this happened around COVID time period, like 2020, 2021, right?
Yeah.
So you've had a few years to kind of settle into being part of this Chosen phenomenon. So where are you now? I mean, you were telling me earlier about Chosen Con. Have you been an
hmm
extra, or is this going to be your first time being an extra? Or just tell me a little bit about what's going on now with you.
Okay. So, um, I watch all the live streams, continuously, and my dream. This is a dream that I have been praying for since I first started watching The Chosen, that I would be an extra. And this is the first time I'm going to be an extra, and everything worked out beautifully. And I'm just so thankful. I just am so thankful that, I just can't wait to be a part of this beautiful project, and I'm not going to cry, but I just, I just, when you have dreams that you really believe in and things that you really want to be a part of. And, you know, um, after experiencing, like I said, the Chosen Con, and then now with this, the extra in Utah, and I just, for season 5 and being, the filming that it is, I don't know if I'm allowed to say what it is, but to be able to film season 5, I'm blown away. You know what I mean? I truly am. So it'll be an amazing experience, and I'll get to see all these wonderful people like you. Well, I may not see you because it's a different week, but uh, you know, but to meet up with the wonderful people like Kathy Hughes and Viv Surson and all those wonderful people, and either other people that we had met, because they had a wonderful barbecue the night on the Friday night at Chosen Con.
Oh, I missed
And
that.
yeah, it was wonderful, and a lot of them were extras, so we got to meet a lot of them too. So I'm in a place where, if it never happens again, I am just thankful so much to be a part of it, and I hope it does happen again because now I got all these other clothes.
Yeah,
We'll
I'm
see.
excited too. And I found
Mhm.
out that, I think it's okay to say this. I think everybody knows if you, especially if you saw season 4, and this is coming out after I give spoilers about season 4, but it's going to be Passover week. And so we're going
Right.
to be filming Passover week, and I'm
Mhm.
going to be there the week of Passover this year. So that's like,
Right.
mind
I
blowing in
know.
multiple levels.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I was just gonna say, Matthew's book, his little leather book that he writes
Oh, yeah.
in.
Uh-huh.
So a few of us have bought those so that we can just
Oh,
journal different things that are happening. So
uh-huh.
I have mine, so I'm packing that.
That's a great idea.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah, I can't wait. I know it's going to be an exciting time, and we're going to get to meet so many people. And I mean, I
Mhm.
met several people at Chosen Con, but I get a little introverted when I'm in those big public places. And
Uh-huh.
my sister-in-law, she was like, she didn't go with me, but I was texting them saying, I'm afraid to go out with all these people. She goes, you're surrounded by your people. Why wouldn't you go out there? So
Mhm.
I at least have a little bit more thought about what's happening. One of the guys that I met inside of one of the Chosen Facebook groups, I was talking about how I wanted to interview one of the actors, and he happens to have him as his coach. So he was trying to hook me up and to record on do an interview with him in the future. And it was interesting because he said that he's been a paid extra on The Chosen, and he said
Oh.
he was so exhausted and tired and worn out these long days, and his
Mhm.
body hurt and everything, and he said it made him realize what people probably went through back then in order to see
Right.
Jesus. And I thought,
Right.
wow, we're going to be experiencing things we're not even sure what we're going to be experiencing, right?
I know. And just even at the end of season 4, when you see where Jesus is headed,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be overwhelming even to see the set,
Yes.
I mean, see
Yes.
how beautiful that is, and just be a part of all of that. It'll be beautiful.
So are you still battling cancer today?
Yes, I've actually had cancer for 20 years, but I had surgery, and um, it was the type of surgery, there's no cure for it, for the cancer. And the way that it is, it's because of how it infiltrated me, it was expected to metastasize. So at that same time, all that stuff was happening. I found out that it had, and that happened just before I had the head injury. There's no treatment for it, but the syndrome that comes with it, that's what I get treated for every 4 weeks for the rest of my life. But like I say, I don't ever say I'm dying from cancer. I always say I'm living with cancer. And I just, I take every day as it comes. I feel great as far as that goes. You know what I mean? I just have to, you know, as much as I hate doing it, but just go for my, my injection every 4 weeks. So I'm like, you know what? People have diabetes. People have, other kinds of illnesses that they have to treat the rest of their life. So, if God, decides how long I'm going to be on this earth, then, I'll deal with it when I have to deal with it and just make the best of it and love life.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it sounds like The Chosen helped you overcome depression. It got you back to
Hmm.
church, closer connection with God, and your family is now Chosen followers. I'm sure it's impacting
Right.
their lives in great ways
It
too.
is. Yes, it is. Definitely.
You have quite the story, Karen. Is there anything that you left out that you want to share?
No. Well, just thank you to everyone involved in this, and I hope we get to the chance to get it out to so many more people. I try to spread the word as, whenever I can. And I hope that it gets to be in so many different languages too, so that, we can try and save some people too. So,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Karen, for being part of this. I really appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing your story with everybody. I'm sure there's going to be people that are going to relate. And I really appreciate hearing your story, especially because I am a former Catholic, and
Hmm.
you're the first person I've actually spoken to that is still practicing in Catholicism, because a lot of people I know, they no longer go to the Catholic Church. So you've had
Right.
this great experience and you're still in the Catholic Church. I think that's great. I love the fact that you still found your faith where you need to be at. And it just shows that this show is meant for everybody. It's not meant to be like, oh, you're going to end up being an evangelist or a
Right.
Baptist or whatever, you
Right,
know?
exactly. Exactly. It's just to bring you to a place of peace. And, I think that that's a fabulous thing. And, thank God. Thank God for loving us, because that's one thing I always felt too, is that, God doesn't love me. I always feared God, and, you know, he loves us no matter what. You know what I mean? No matter what we've done, no matter how we are, he still loves us. And that's another thing that The Chosen has shown. So I'm very grateful.
Isn't it amazing how episode 1 of season 1 has drawn so many people into the show? Dallas was so clever in writing that first episode in a way that just made you want to watch the next episode. I remember when I first saw this in 2020 and I couldn't wait for the next episode. And then after I saw the second one, I had to see the third one and then the fourth one. And then I binge watched and then I had to watch it again and again. It is such a fantastic series, as we all know, as the fans of The Chosen. If you have a story that you would like to share and would be willing to be vulnerable, just like Karen was, please send me an email at Shey, Shey, at Walking with the Chosen, or you can join the Facebook group. Search for Walking with the Chosen on Facebook, and you'll find us there. The group is growing, and I'm excited to have new people in there all the time, willing to share their stories, and they're chiming in to all the conversations we're having. I'm trying to be more of a Chosen insider, so as I hear of news, I'm sharing them inside of this group as well, because I know you don't all pay attention to everything Dallas says like some of us do. So I'm going to try to help keep you up to date so that you know when the next new thing is coming. As a matter of fact, as you know, season 4 is currently out, but did you watch the live stream today and hear about the camp that they're going to be offering the end of August? Dallas and Amanda and some of the other people, some actors from the show, Big Daddy Weave, other people are going to be there, and they're going to be doing a retreat. I thought that sounds pretty cool. It's $1,200 per person, and you'll be staying on the Salvation Army premises, but you also have to pay for that separately, and I don't know how much that is. But there is an application process to fill out, which I just completed, and now I have to wait until they approve it, and then I guess at that point is when I pay, because they didn't ask me to pay at this point in time. It was just an application process. So we'll see where that leads. Maybe I'll have a chance to hang out with those folks and be going deeper into my conversation with God. I think that would be awesome. That's all I have for this week's episode. Stay tuned for more, and until then, keep walking with the chosen.